My name is Anne, and I'm 30 years old. I've been working in the corporate world for almost 8 years now. My goal has always been simple: work hard, rise up, and build a future where my efforts are recognized. But things didn't go as planned. It was a rainy Wednesday evening, and the city streets were slick with the reflection of streetlights as I walked through the glass doors of the office building. The usual hum of the workplace felt quieter, like something was about to change. I had just learned that the promotion I had been working for was now in jeopardy. What had started as a hopeful day had turned into one full of doubt and uncertainty. Inside, I tried to hold my composure, but my mind was racing. I had earned this position. I knew it. But Adam, my colleague, someone I thought I could trust, had other plans. The mood shifted in an instant. There was a mix of frustration and determination building inside me. I wasn't one to back down easily, but this was different. This was betrayal, and betrayal always cuts deep. I'm the kind of person who believes in hard work above all else. I've always been determined, sometimes to the point of stubbornness. But I also know that I'm not perfect. I've struggled with my insecurities, especially when it comes to standing out in a male-dominated field. Still, I've always pushed through. At 30, I'd worked my way up from an entry-level assistant to a position just below the one I'd hoped for. I knew this was my time, until Adam, who had been quietly undermining my efforts for months, made his move. He wasn't just after the same promotion. He wanted to destroy everything I had worked for. I had to fight back, but this time it wouldn't be through petty office politics or complaints. I was going to show him that no one could take what was rightfully mine. I needed to prove to myself and everyone around me that I wasn't just going to let this happen. I wasn't going to let Adam, or anyone, keep me down. The stage was set. The conflict was clear. Now I had to take action. But I knew one thing for sure. I was going to rise above the challenge, no matter what. The next morning, I walked into the office with a knot in my stomach, hoping that the events from yesterday were just a bad dream. But reality quickly set in when I saw Adam in the break room, a smug look on his face as he casually sipped his coffee. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut, but the truth was inescapable. It wasn't a dream. Adam had orchestrated the whole thing. My boss, Greg, had called me into his office first thing. I walked in with my usual confident stride, hoping to hear the good news I had been working toward for months. But when I sat down, the look on Greg's face told me everything I needed to know. "Anne, I'm afraid I have some difficult news," Greg said, his voice low and apologetic. I felt a cold rush of panic as he continued, explaining that the promotion I had been eyeing was no longer available to me. It wasn't because of my performance. On the contrary, Greg said I had been doing an excellent job. But there had been concerns from higher management about my ability to lead a team, especially after a few recent projects hadn't gone as smoothly as they should have. "But Greg, I've worked hard," I interrupted, my voice trembling. "I've been here longer than Adam. I'm the one who deserves this position." He looked at me sympathetically, but there was nothing he could say. "I know, Anne, that Adam is. He's more suitable for the role right now. He's shown a lot of initiative recently." I felt the words hit me like a slap across the face. Initiative? Adam? My mind raced, trying to process the betrayal. Adam, who had been quietly undermining me, was now going to take what I had earned. I could feel the anger rising in me, the sense of injustice. How could this happen? I left the office with a heavy heart, my head spinning. I'd always known that the workplace could be competitive, but I had never expected something like this. I had worked my butt off, putting in the long hours, delivering results, and earning the respect of my colleagues. Yet here I was, on the outside looking in, with Adam, the one who had played dirty, getting the promotion instead. My phone buzzed as I walked to my car. It was a message from Olivia, my friend and confidant. How did it go? I glanced at the screen, the weight of my frustration sinking deeper. I tapped out a quick response. It's over. Adam got the promotion. I didn't bother to explain more. She already knew how much it meant to me. I sat in my car for a few minutes, staring at the steering wheel, struggling to gather my thoughts. My emotions were all over the place: hurt, anger, confusion, and betrayal. It was hard to comprehend how someone who had worked behind my back could get away with it. But I also knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to just let this slide. I couldn't. The more I thought about it, the more I realized this wasn't just about a promotion. It was about respect. Adam had crossed a line, and I wasn't about to let him get away with it. I wasn't going to let this define me. I had worked too hard for too long to let someone else take what was mine without a fight. I took a deep breath and made a decision then and there. I wasn't going to play by Adam's rules. I was going to rise above this, and I was going to show everyone, myself included, that nothing could stop me from getting what I deserved. The conflict had just begun. Adam thought he had won, but he had no idea what he had started. The stakes were higher now, and I had everything to lose, but I also had everything to gain. It was time to take control of my career and show Adam that messing with me was the biggest mistake he'd ever made. The next few weeks were a blur of determination and sleepless nights. I knew that Adam was already enjoying the fruits of his deceit, but I couldn't afford to focus on him. I had to stay on track, focused on my own growth and proving that I was more than capable of handling the responsibility I had been denied. I wasn't going to let this setback break me. It was only going to make me stronger. I threw myself into my work with an intensity I hadn't known I was capable of. The tasks that had once seemed mundane now felt like my ticket to redemption. I spent extra hours refining presentations, ensuring every detail was perfect. I stayed late, developing new strategies for the department, all while quietly gathering evidence of Adam's unethical behavior. He wasn't going to get away with this. But the road to recovery was far from smooth. One morning, I walked into the office to find an email from Greg, the very boss who had told me that Adam had been more suitable for the promotion. It was an invitation to a meeting, just me and him. I knew the moment I read it that this wasn't a routine check-in. The anxiety gripped me, but I steeled myself. I wasn't going to let this moment knock me down. As I walked into his office, Greg barely looked up from his desk. "Anne," he said, with that same apologetic tone that I had grown tired of hearing, "there have been some concerns about your recent performance. It seems like you've been spending too much time on side projects." I blinked, momentarily thrown off guard. "Side projects?" I repeated, struggling to hide the shock in my voice. "I've been putting in extra work to improve the team's results." "Yes, but you've been pulling focus from your primary duties. Your productivity has slipped." It felt like the floor dropped out from under me. There I was working harder than ever, and now I was being blamed for a decline in my productivity. Was this another attempt to push me out? Or was Greg simply being influenced by Adam's manipulative tactics? "I understand your concern," I said, holding back my frustration. "But I believe these side projects are vital to improving the department's performance. I have a clear plan." Greg wasn't convinced. "I'll need to see tangible results soon, Anne, or we'll have to reconsider your future here." That was my breaking point. It was clear now. Greg had already made up his mind about me. Adam had done his damage, and I was being penalized for it. But I wasn't going to fold. Not now. As I left the office, my mind was spinning. I'd been working so hard, but it seemed like every step I took was being blocked. But I refused to give up. If I wanted to prove my worth, I would have to push even harder. Olivia, my best friend, noticed my frustration when I met her for lunch later that day. "What's going on, Anne? You look like you've been through a war." I sighed, pushing my food around on my plate. "I'm stuck, Liv. It's like no matter what I do, I'm never enough for them. First, Adam steals the promotion, and now Greg's piling on more pressure. I'm just tired." She looked at me with a raised eyebrow. "You're not the type to back down. So, what's next?" I could feel my frustration turn into determination again. "I'm going to double down. I'm not letting them make me feel small. I'm going to show them, every last one of them, that I'm the right person for this job." The next few weeks became a battle of attrition. I poured my energy into perfecting my work, attending extra training sessions to improve my leadership skills, and constantly refining my ideas. But every time I took one step forward, something pushed me 2 steps back. A critical presentation I worked on for days was shot down by higher management. Another colleague, someone I thought I could trust, subtly undermined my ideas in a meeting. And worst of all, I began to suspect that Adam had a hand in some of the setbacks. But each failure taught me something new. Each challenge strengthened my resolve. I wasn't going to let Adam's dirty tricks stop me. I would find a way to turn every setback into an opportunity. During one particularly difficult week, I got a call from my former mentor, Jane. She had been a guiding force in my career, someone who had always pushed me to aim higher. When she heard what I was going through, she invited me to meet her for coffee. Her advice was exactly what I needed. "You've got to stop letting Adam's actions control you," she said, her eyes sharp with wisdom. "You can't change what he did, but you can change how you respond. Turn this into your advantage. Show everyone that you're the better person. Don't let him drag you into his mess." Her words were a turning point. I realized then that I had been so focused on fighting Adam that I had lost sight of the bigger picture. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about proving to myself that I could rise above everything, that I could overcome any obstacle. With newfound clarity, I began to shift my approach. Instead of reacting to every setback, I focused on the long-term goal. I started to build a coalition of allies, people who believed in my abilities and who wanted to see me succeed. I worked closely with other team members, fostering a supportive and collaborative environment. Slowly, my efforts began to pay off. My team started to show real improvements, and my reputation began to shift in the right direction. But Adam wasn't going to let me rise without a fight. He kept undermining me, spreading rumors, and trying to sabotage my progress at every turn. But for every move he made, I became stronger. I wasn't playing his game anymore. I was creating my own. Despite the challenges, I was moving forward, and my confidence was growing. But I knew the final test was coming. I still needed to gather enough evidence to expose Adam for what he truly was. The battle wasn't over. It was just heating up. The day of reckoning finally arrived, and with it, the weight of everything I had been working toward, the evidence, the late nights, the quiet moments of doubt. Everything was on the line. It was time to expose Adam for what he truly was. I'd spent weeks gathering information, speaking with colleagues who had witnessed Adam's manipulation firsthand, and compiling proof of his unethical behavior. I had everything I needed to prove that he had sabotaged my career and undermined the team's work for his own gain. It wasn't just about the promotion anymore. It was about showing the world that I wouldn't be intimidated into submission. The moment of truth came when Greg called me into his office. I already knew what he was going to say. Adam had convinced him that I was a liability, that I was too distracted with side projects to focus on the core responsibilities of the job. But this time, I wasn't going to let him manipulate the situation. Anne, I think it's time we have a serious conversation about your future here, Greg said as I walked into his office, his tone cold and distant. I nodded, trying to mask the storm brewing inside me. I agree, Greg. We need to talk. I set the folder of evidence down on his desk, the one containing everything I had collected. Before you make any more decisions about my future, I think you need to see something, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on me, but I didn't flinch. This was it, the final step. Greg furrowed his brow, glancing down at the folder. What's this? Proof of Adam's behavior, I said, my tone sharp. I've spent the past few weeks gathering information, and I have everything you need to see exactly how he's been undermining me, and everyone else, since he joined the team. I'm not just talking about the promotion. I'm talking about how he's been manipulating situations, using people, and sabotaging projects for his own benefit. Greg's face paled as he flipped through the pages, reading the emails, the messages, the witness accounts. I could see the shift in his expression as the reality of what I was saying began to sink in. This wasn't just a petty office rivalry. This was something far darker. Something that could cost the company much more than just a promotion. Anne, Greg said, his voice trailing off as he looked at me, clearly shaken by the evidence in front of him. I had no idea. I nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anger. You never did you? Adam's been playing you this whole time. Greg was silent for a long moment, his eyes scanning the documents in front of him. Then, slowly, he stood up, his face hardening with resolve. I'll take care of this, he said, his voice now firm. Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Anne. As I left Greg's office, I felt a rush of emotions flood over me. I had done it. I had exposed the truth. But the feeling of triumph was short-lived, replaced quickly by the fear of what might come next. I had just taken down someone who had been a powerful force in the company. Would there be backlash? Would my career be permanently tainted? As I walked back to my desk, my hands shook, not from fear, but from the sheer intensity of what had just transpired. I had fought for my career, for my future, and I had won. But I knew that the consequences wouldn't end there. I had just triggered a chain of events that would change everything. The next few days were a whirlwind. Adam was called in for a meeting with HR, and I was asked to stay in the office while they sorted things out. I watched as he left the building, his face red with anger and disbelief. For the first time since he had stolen the promotion from me, I felt no guilt, no remorse. I had fought for what was rightfully mine, and I had won. But as the days passed, I began to wonder if I had done the right thing. Adam was a colleague, yes, but he had crossed a line. He had manipulated and betrayed me, and I had been forced to act. Still, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that this battle had cost me something more than just the promotion. Had I sacrificed part of my own integrity in the process? Had I become just like him? These were questions I would have to answer in time. But for now, I had done what I set out to do. I had exposed the truth, and in doing so, I had taken control of my own destiny. I wasn't just fighting for a promotion anymore. I was fighting for my own sense of worth. And that was something no one, not even Adam, could take away from me. The weeks following Adam's departure were a blur of change. The company had undergone a thorough investigation into his actions, and the fallout was swift. Adam was terminated for his unethical behavior, and the department began to rebuild, this time with a clearer sense of what was acceptable and what wasn't. The trust that had been eroded slowly started to repair itself, and I found myself being entrusted with more responsibilities, the very opportunities Adam had once stolen from me. I could feel the weight of the journey lifting off my shoulders, but the victory wasn't as sweet as I had imagined. Yes, I had exposed the truth, and yes, I had reclaimed my place. But the price had been high. The tension of constantly looking over my shoulder, the emotional toll of fighting an unseen enemy, had worn me down in ways I hadn't expected. But now, as I looked out at the department and my team, I realized that something had shifted. I wasn't just back to where I started. I had grown. The Anne who had been passed over for the promotion, the Anne who had doubted her own worth, was no longer the same. I had learned that resilience wasn't just about surviving. It was about rising stronger, even when the odds seemed stacked against you. I had learned to trust myself, to fight for what was rightfully mine, and to never back down from a challenge, no matter how formidable it seemed. One afternoon, as I sat in my new office, a quiet sense of satisfaction washed over me. The room was still a little too empty, a little too sterile, but it was mine. It was a symbol of everything I had fought for. I ran my fingers along the desk, thinking about the hard lessons, the mistakes I had made, and the people who had stood by me. Olivia had been there through it all, offering her unwavering support. Greg had come through in the end, realizing too late the error of his judgment, but his willingness to make things right had allowed me to move forward. A knock at the door brought me out of my thoughts. It was Greg, looking a little more uncomfortable than usual. "Anne, I just wanted to say again how sorry I am for everything that happened. I never should have doubted you. I've learned a lot through this process, and I promise I'll do better moving forward." I looked at him, my expression softening. "It's okay, Greg. You made a mistake, but you fixed it. That's all that matters now." He nodded, a look of relief crossing his face. "I know it doesn't change what happened, but I hope we can move forward, work together to build something stronger." I smiled, a sense of closure settling in. "We will." The next few months were a whirlwind of positive change. With Adam out of the picture, the team began to work together more harmoniously. I was able to implement the projects I had been passionate about, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like my voice truly mattered. One evening, after another long day at the office, I met Olivia for coffee. She had always been my sounding board, my confidant, and tonight was no different. As we sat in our usual booth, I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past few months finally start to lift. "You know," I said, stirring my coffee, "I never thought I'd get to this point. It feels different now. Like everything that happened has shaped me into someone new." Olivia raised an eyebrow. "In a good way, I hope." I nodded. "In a way I didn't expect. I've learned that the fight is worth it, even when it seems impossible. But more than that, I've learned that standing up for yourself doesn't just change the situation, it changes you. You become someone you can truly respect." She smiled warmly, her support always a constant. "I'm proud of you, Anne. You've come so far." The weight of her words settled over me, and for the first time, I truly believed them. I had come far. And while the journey wasn't easy, it had made me stronger, more determined, and more at peace with who I was becoming. As I looked out the window that evening, the city lights twinkling in the distance, I realized that I had not only reclaimed my career, I had reclaimed my confidence. I was no longer the person I had been when I first walked into that office, hoping for a chance. I was someone who had fought for everything she had, someone who had discovered her strength in the face of adversity. And as I prepared to face whatever the future held, I knew one thing for certain: I was unstoppable. The end of this chapter wasn't the end of the story. It was only the beginning, and I was ready to take on whatever came next.